Hi, I wanted to unpack what GLP-1s, fat jabs, Ozempic, Wegovy, tirzepatide, Mounjaro are doing in food and drink at the moment. And there's three things I wanted to talk about, and two of which you probably haven't heard before. So I think it's worth tuning in to some of these nuances that are starting to come out. As you know, I've made a series of videos and been all over this space for the last 2, 3 years because it's really interesting in terms of how the dynamics are playing out. And I think the first thing I wanted to say is that the kind of truism that there's no such thing as a biological free lunch. So for the users of these compounds, these meds, whether they're licensed users or they're using them kind of off-label from the web or from the dark web, wherever they're getting their hands on this, or from the NHS, there's a couple of side effects that are starting to generate some concern. You've got the obvious side effects. So you do get sort of sickness and nausea that people report. That suppresses their food consumption generally. It makes them more lethargic and tired, which obviously suppresses the nighttime economy because by the time they've done their job or they've done their childcare or their daytime occupation, they haven't got the oomph to go out and enjoy themselves quite so much as they would normally. And then lastly, there are some worrying kind of morbidity. So there's some deaths starting to creep into the statistics, mainly around pancreatitis, but also around some other organs in the body. So there is actually a bit of a backlash. And if you read the red tops or the broadsheets, you'll get a sense of that this isn't something that's a one-way ticket, that's just a kind of a miracle cure. There's side effects and there's unintended consequences that I think people need to work through. And you're starting to see that in the numbers where, yes, of course, 10+% of Americans are on these compounds, and certainly the European statistics are heading that way, and there's no reason to think they won't get there. But actually, that kind of in the mature markets, that's starting to wobble those rates of growth. We're seeing some dips every time that there's another death from pancreatitis or there's another kind of health scare around these compounds. So I don't think this is just exponential growth. It's just going to keep growing. I think there's going to be fits and starts in the consumption to it. And then I think the second thing to say is that we're starting to see again that effectively what it's doing by reducing satiety, appetite, desire for food, is it's doing that through a mechanism that sort of squishes the dopamine out. So that reward that people get when they have food is being squashed out, and that's manifesting in a reluctance to drink, and particularly alcohol, particularly given the calorie density of alcohol. A lot of people are either moderating their consumption down or packing it in altogether. So you're really starting to see that in the booze numbers, in the wine numbers, the spirits numbers, and in other numbers. For people who take these compounds, they have a completely different alcohol profile than they did before. And of course, when they come off these compounds, their tolerance for alcohol is a lot lower. Therefore, they don't need 2 pints, 3 pints, 4 pints to get to the same sort of buzz level that they did before. So they tend to drink less when they kind of emerge off these compounds, which of course is an issue for the alcohol industry. It should be something that's celebrated, but of course it's an issue from a consumption level for if you're in the business of selling alcohol. And then from a food perspective, you still have that factor whereby people on these compounds have two things. They crave flavor and, if you like, the buzz of food, because it's kind of been much more greeny. It's much more black and white. A dish in front of you. People report from these compounds, and it is sort of a full spectrum, full color meal. So if you're presented with a hugely vibrant salad on these compounds, you just won't see the colours pop. You won't see the purples of a beetroot, the reds from a tomato, the luscious greens from lettuce. You'll tend to see a kind of smorgasbord of veg and sort of a bit like a chore, sort of plough your way through it. They're all what the qual data is telling us. And then kind of biologically, because the calories that people tend to have is around the sort of 1,000 calorie mark, because people literally can't stomach much more than that. If they do fill up on ultra processed foods or soft foods, call it what you will, there's not a lot of room in the diet for nutrient dense foods. So the calories, the minerals, the vitamins, the fiber, the protein, all the sort of building blocks that mammals like humans need. There isn't a lot of room for those if you filled up on UPF food. So you're getting this trend where people are thinner versions of themselves, but they're actually malnourished. And they've seen that in the manufacturers, trying to bring out ranges, ready meal orientated ranges, essentially, that kind of talk to that trend. So I think that's another area of innovation and white space whereby, people quite regularly end up, if they don't resistance train and train with weights, they end up smaller versions of themselves, but they've disproportionately lost lean muscle mass. So of course that means if they go back to type and they go back to eating what they're eating before, they're in a lot worse state, because they're going to be broadly get to where they were before, but they'll do that without the muscle mass to support their skeleton. So that will be a very deleterious change to their circumstances. So there's a real need for both protein-rich foods, but also nutrient-dense foods that would support somebody on these compounds having an active lifestyle and training. So I think we're now out of the early part of the market where these are seen as wonder drugs, and we're into a much more kind of nuanced kind of early middle age for these compounds.